Hi there. Welcome back to the Marketing Speakeasy, a podcast where we talk to marketing leaders and invite them to get a little bit real, a little bit raw, a little bit more unfiltered, as if we're grabbing a drink in a bar at the end of a long workday and just really need to share what has been going on through their minds. Today's guest is Dan Loudon. He is the Chief Marketing Officer at Blackbird AI, a narrative intelligence company that helps protect their customers from narrative attacks, which are a weird blend between a PR scandal and a cybersecurity threat, and they can cause both financial and reputational harm. Dan has been leading strategic marketing efforts at Blackbird AI, including both demand generation and brand leadership efforts. He also has a very long history, 20 years in fact, of being a strategic marketing leader at both Fortune 500 companies and fast-growing cybersecurity startups. We got into a lot of very interesting things, so I would love to take you there. If you don't know me, my name is Maria Delano. I am the CEO and founder of Kalina Marketing, and also, more importantly, your virtual bartender for the day. So let's get into it. I love this conversation. We got into all kinds of wild things. I've learned a lot. I hope you learned something too, and enjoy yourself. Grab a drink. Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm very good, Maria. How are you?
I am doing great too. I am very glad that I finally got you on this podcast. We had to reschedule a couple of times, and I've been so excited because you intrigued me immediately with the responses that you gave in the little sign up form because you said that you wrote a romance novel.
Wow, we're going to start there.
Oh, we're
Okay.
starting there.
I've been in tech marketing for over 30 years and
Yeah.
then, I work a lot in startups, work a lot of hours, a lot of time. And then during COVID, I was working constantly. I'm like, I've got to do something different. I've got to, you know, go after another passion of mine. And I never thought I would ever publish a romance novel. But with COVID and, being stuck at home, I just found, it was time to do something that I was passionate about. So I actually looked at some of the Netflix and Amazon, romance television shows and movies. And I'm like, gosh, many of them are terrible, to be perfectly
They
honest.
really are. I mean, how many oh my God, Vanessa Hudgens, right? There's like movies with like five Vanessa Hudgenses at this point. It's become a joke.
Well, it's, to me, like, there are some that are very good and then
Yeah.
some that are not. But I'm a romance romantic at heart. I asked my wife to marry me at the top of the Empire State Building.
I
And,
love that.
it's like, okay, maybe I could write something that would be better than this with no expectations. And I've decided to self-publish so I would learn what that experience was
Mhm.
all about. And it was amazing. I worked with a couple of different groups to help me um, turn it into something, um, in my view, that I'm very proud of. But I wrote it like out of my mind, no AI. It was out of my thoughts, dreams, some of my real life experiences, some of my friends' experiences, and a lot of strong women that have been in my life. My wife, my daughter, my mother-in-law, people I've worked with. It's a combination of a lot of different things, and I had no expectations. And when I published it, people were like, "You did what?" And, the response I got was tremendous. I
I
even
love
had
that.
it's called the Met Kiss, around the Met Gala and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I even had the CEO of the Metropolitan Museum of Art send me a note saying he's gonna add this to his permanent collection, which I
You're
was very, very proud of, yeah.
that's serious. You're not joking.
I'm not kidding,
That is really cool.
I have the note, and
Wow.
I put it out, so it was fun. But, like, the reaction from friends and colleagues, it was incredible support, and, I did it. It's not to make money. Any money that I'm making, I put towards Girls Who Code and things like that.
Yeah.
But I sold like over 7,000 of them, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool for self-published book. There are like traditionally published books that don't sell that many copies.
Yeah, and I was proud on Amazon and others. Is like I have like a 4.4 rating and 100 and some reviews. So I'm like I guess it resonated with somebody. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of
Yeah.
fun.
I think you accomplished your original goal of, seeing if you could do something better than the trashy romance you were
Yeah,
seeing. It seems like you did.
it's not trashy. It is, it's fun. And, I just felt that there needed to be some positive stories in the world, especially during that time. So that's why I wrote it.
I adore everything about that. I'll put the link in the show notes if you don't mind, in case we have some romance readers listening to this.
Sure. Go ahead. Go
I'll
ahead.
have it side by side with your main company website. So, to give our listeners a sense of why I was so confused seeing that, and also why so many people, as you said, their first reaction was also surprise, can you introduce what you actually do in your main career, right?
Yeah.
But as we do it on the show, can you introduce yourself in a way that the typical grandma would understand that's not familiar with marketing or business jargon or too much of technology?
Sure. Sure. I mean, I've been in, I'll just say technology marketing for over 30 years, and it's more because of the love of the brand,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how I got attracted to marketing. I felt personal relationship with brands as I was growing up, all the top ones that you may think of. And I'm like, wow, there's something here that to me is really special if you do it well. And that's where, when I started my career, it was in technology. I was able to be a part of companies that I was very proud of the products and the brands that they were representing. I wasn't a technologist at heart.
Mhm.
Um, I know how to tell a story that people can understand and understand the benefit of it. So, like in my first wave of kind of my career was around laptop computing when that was starting to really bloom. I was a part of the IBM ThinkPad team, which was
Oh,
amazing and an amazing brand, and something I'm still very proud of today, and still have a lot of friends that go back that period of time. So back then, laptops were new, right, and
yeah.
very expensive. Now everybody has them. Then the next wave I rode was Wi-Fi. Before even anyone knew what Wi-Fi was, I joined a startup in Austin, Texas, and we helped deploy Wi-Fi across the nation at airports and hotels and things like that. And it was really
Wow.
exciting to me because it was a technology enabler that made people very, very happy to be connected. And that was a lot of fun. And now Wi-Fi is everywhere. Then I was involved in e-commerce, enablement of e-commerce in the early days around mobile applications and things like that, which was a lot of fun. And then over the past 10 years, I've been in cybersecurity, which to me, it's around protecting the world, protecting my family, protecting companies, protecting our country and our allies from cybersecurity attacks. And to me, it's always, do I have passion for the brand? Do I have passion for the company that I work for? And it's always got to be yes. Like they got to have a great mission, and that to me has been kind of the benchmark for my career, and been, to me, very exciting. It keeps me attuned to what's going on in the world and trying to have as much of an impact as I can. That's my career.
I love that, and I do think that was a great explanation with simple words. So you did great. That was a fantastic answer.
What's that?
I have a question. You said that you're not a technologist, but yet you ended up in extremely tech-heavy roles, right? I would say laptops when they were early, that was very techy. Wi-Fi when it was early was very techy. Now I feel like it's less of a techy subject, but back then it was. And then cybersecurity, right? Like I know so many marketers that are afraid of even touching cybersecurity. I am one of the few, right? That people are like, how do you even work with these clients? And I like it, but that's because I'm a very, very techy person and I've always been very tech oriented. So, for you, when you're self describing yourself as not a technologist, how did you end up in these kinds of spaces? And do you think that it's served you well in any way to be a bit of an outsider?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, to me, when I got into cybersecurity 10 years ago, I knew a good amount from it from the past industries that I was involved in because it was a part of everything that we were doing, right? Whether it was protection of a Wi-Fi network or of a device or things like that, but it was always more in the periphery. But when big things started to happen in the news impacting everyone, I'm like, okay, massive problem. Let's go see what I can do to have an impact, but also just a massive opportunity to help companies that we serve solve a big problem, right? So, yes, it's very technical, and I'm technical enough to be able to have a conversation with any chief information security officer. Um, and if there's a question that's asked that I don't know the answer to, I will be the first to say, I'm not the perfect person to answer this question. Let me get the answer from our experts who I'm surrounded by, who are very, very technical people. But, here's how I look at how our solutions of the companies that I've worked for protect your organization, protect your executives. And here's the value it brings to the table. And that to me is still storytelling. It's building relationships. It's building trust. It's building friendships, which I go back with customers I worked with 30 years ago, I'm still friends with.
I love that.
So even though it's a very technical field, it's all about trust. It's all about relationships. About, hey, does your product provide value and help me solve my problem and help me and my team be more successful, more productive? And if I feel that way about the companies that I serve and the customers that I talk to, then I'm very passionate about telling that story. And that's where I feel like I'm in my very big comfort zone.
Hmm.
And if I'm pushing myself as I go to my next startup, and if it's not something that's challenging to me that I feel like I have to learn a lot about, then that's not exciting for me. And that's why every company I've moved to, and I've just moved a year and a half ago to this company called
Yeah.
Blackbird.ai that protects against narrative attacks that are misinformation, disinformation, deep fakes. You hear about it every day in the news. It's like, it's a massive mission that we're trying to have an impact on. And to me, that's what keeps me excited. And that's why, I still keep doing this. I'm having fun.
Yeah, you seem to have like such an emotional investment in the companies you work with, right? In the products. It seems like that's spanned your entire career. I feel
Yeah.
like that's a very good quality to have, and it makes you a better marketer. I
Yeah.
like to say, right, if you don't care about the things you're promoting, why should the audience, right?
Yep. Sorry. Yep. 100%. Like, for me, if, um, I could have gone and worked for companies around a product right out of college around chewing gum, and it was a
Yeah.
very big brand. That was not exciting to me. But it could have been a very successful path. For me, it has to be something very passionate, very impactful to the world. And that's why I love startups, is because we can create and innovate very, very quickly. And then working with very big companies, either partnering with them or being acquired by them, which I have been over the years, then can spread that technology very, very fast to help so many people.
Yeah.
And that mission is incredibly powerful. And unfortunately for me, I've been a part of a good number of exits because of that.
That's awesome. And yeah, I totally get it. Like you actually see the impact that the marketing is making on the world as opposed to with chewing gum, right? Even if you've sold more chewing gum, like how do you really feel that outside of looking at a report or a dashboard? That's kind of it, right? You're
Yeah,
not going to notice that the world has changed because people are chewing on the different kind of gum
right.
versus if you see people adopting Wi-Fi or protecting themselves from narrative attacks, right? That I feel like you could see and it's a
Yeah.
lot more tangible.
And nothing against the people that do it. It's just a
Yeah.
different world to live in. And, to me, I've always felt like let's continue to ride these technology waves. And that way, I can continue to have as much of impact as possible. And from a marketing perspective, I've developed a playbook. I call it my marketing playbook over the years that I bring to every one of the companies that I've been with. That is all the things that's worked for me in the past.
Hmm.
And then that playbook changes constantly based off of what's working now, right?
Yeah.
During COVID, it completely flipped,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
During all of the things that are going on in the world right now, it constantly changes. But that playbook has enabled me to tell a story in a very creative way to stand out for people to go, wow, that's a really interesting company. I want to learn more. Right. Like, and again, that's what I've done with past companies that I've been with. I've done it at the company Blackbird.ai that I'm with now, where it's an AI based company and everything we use, all the imagery is AI created. And it's very unique and it stands out. And people go, wow, I want to learn more.
Hmm.
And the story is know the narrative. And that really gets people's attention. So to have the right message, the right kind of brand design, a product that has impact, to me, that gets me really excited and passionate about what I'm doing.
Yeah, and you were mentioning storytelling before, right? As well.
Yeah.
So like being able to tell a story about that product and a story about that technology. Building on that, I want to go back to the whole romance novel thing, if you will entertain me for a second.
Okay.
I firmly believe that the things we do outside of work, right, us like our hobbies or random interests we chase, impact the way we think about work, right? Especially make connections. And I feel like in creative roles, like with marketing, that can have a pretty big impact, even if it's totally incidental and you weren't predicting it. So, based on that, my question is, how did writing that romance novel and then self publishing it and that whole experience make you a better marketer?
You know, it's a great question because I had no idea how to market my own personal book, right? And that was part of the wonderful process that I learned about self-publishing. And if you just publish and put something out there, there's millions and millions of romance novels out there, and more are being published every day. So you have to figure out ways to market it. That were very different than I've ever done
Yeah.
before, right? So, to me, I had to be creative. I put a small budget next to this just because I felt, you know, let's give it a try, and I came up with some pretty unique ways to go and promote it. One of them, which was really fun, I reached out to my where I grew up. It's Ocean City, New Jersey. The
Yeah.
newspaper is called the Sentinel Ledger,
Uh-huh.
and part of the book is based in Ocean City. So I reached out to the editor and I said, "Hey, I just published this book. I graduated from Ocean City High School in this year, and Ocean City's in the story, and I just felt like I should share it with you guys. If you want to talk about it, I'm happy to talk about it." And sure enough, the editor called me, did a big interview with me, and published it in the local newspaper where I grew up.
That's
Right.
amazing.
And, to me was a lot of fun when it showed up in my hometown newspaper, right? And it's just a fun thing to do. And then again, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, I sent them a copy of the book, put it in a FedEx package and sent it to the CEO and just said, "Hey, I wanted you to know that I published this because I love the Met and the story wraps around it, and I hope you enjoy the story." And then I
Yeah.
get a letter back from him, right? So those are different ways that I use to market it, not with an expectation I would get a response, but you got to be creative. And in being in startups and in marketing, you always have to be creative. You'd never have as much budget as you would like or as big a team as you would like. You have to be creative in ways in connecting with people. And that's just some of the things that I did that, continue to learn from.
Did any part of that experience influence your marketing playbook that you say you carry with you from company to company?
Yeah, I mean, I did something that I was proud of,
Yeah.
right? And I took my time to publish something that I felt good about. And that's, again, everything that I try to do in my corporate job is something that I'm proud about. And, if hopefully it has a good impact, or if it doesn't, I learn from it, right? So I certainly learned from some of the things in writing my book that didn't work. And then I learned from things that did, and it just goes into my life and goes into my friendships and goes into my business. But the most fun I had with it was people who I didn't expect to hear from, when I put it out on social media and stuff like that, came back to me and they said, "I was been thinking about writing a book. This is amazing that you did this. This has inspired me to write my own book."
Oh,
And
I love that.
to me, that is pretty cool. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
that's again tangible impact, right? As to an earlier point, I feel like you're managing to have that both in your main career as well as in the side projects that you do, which is really cool. Honestly, it's so refreshing listening to you talk about your career and your long career and the fact that you've been able to actually like work on things you're proud of. I hear so much nihilism, right, from people both young and old, especially young people. It's just so discouraging to hear them already giving up and feeling, well, I'm just going to be a corporate cog, right? I'm just going to have to work on things I don't care about and I don't have a choice. And having examples of people, like living, breathing people that have lived the other path and managed to combine, financial viability and a business career with things that you actually care about and are proud of, like that's awesome.
I appreciate that. And,
Yeah.
I do a lot of mentoring. I do some guest lecturing at some universities that I've been involved in. And, I think it's hard, especially for the generation right now, graduating with all that's going on in the world and with AI coming and how that's going to impact. It's tough, right? But when I joined the workforce, it was also tough. Like the stock market had a major crash 4 months into my job after graduating from college. And, so there's always hard things happening, and you're always going to have to do things that are tough or difficult. I still do that today. Like
Yeah.
I do very strategic things that are impacting the company. And then I'm also helping setting up a trade show booth because I have to, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the deal. But I think in the early days, especially what I just did in front of this class, was get your first job. It may not be the perfect job. It's not going to be the perfect job, but it gets you a foundation that you can prove yourself, that you can prove your own personal brand, that you are a hard worker, that you are going after it. And if you do that, you're going to outperform a lot of other people in the world to
Yeah.
put yourself in a position to have roles that you are
Hmm.
happy to do, right? And you got to put in your time. The early days and laptop computer, I was traveling a ton. I was away from my family. It was hard and a lot of work, but you got to put in the time, the effort, and if you build relationships, then good things can happen. But
Yeah. And I feel like if you're
that's the thing I would tell young people today. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're strategic about, creating those opportunities that will give you more choices down the line, because I feel like there are ways to approach the paying your dues stage of your career without actually setting yourself up to have more control. Like,
Right.
even though you were traveling a lot in your early job, you chose to go into the laptop computing side of things as opposed to the chewing gum side, right? Like, that's a
Right.
compromise that's still a proactive choice, I feel.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that. I'd like us to switch more into talking about, Blackbird AI because I am fascinated by what you guys offer. I spent a lot of time on your site, trying to understand it, and I do want to get into that. So, as a segue, I'd like us to start with our first little game show segment.
Okay.
This game is called Threat or Trend, and it's about, I will tell you a scenario, and you need to guess if it is basically a cyber threat or like a privacy threat in a way, or if it is just a marketing trend and it is, innocent and fine and a good thing to do. And
Okay.
of course, some of these have a lot of nuances, but I think we can have some fun with them.
Sounds
Um, are you ready? And you will get a point for each one that you get right, and we will do a
Sounds good.
tally.
And I have not heard any of these questions in advance. I
No,
just want people to know. So
you
that's
did
great.
not. I only
Okay.
finished compiling them like 2 hours ago, so you couldn't have heard them in advance.
Okay.
All right, let's start. So the first scenario that we have is yeah, let's start with a simple one. I think this is a simple one. You get an extremely personal reminder email in your inbox about your renewal for some product, but you never signed up for it. Is
Yeah.
that a threat or a trend?
I would say that's a threat. Yeah.
Why?
Because you click on it, it may put malware on your device. You respond to it and pay it. It will most likely go to someone's from a fraudulent perspective right into their own pocket. And that's certainly, what they call phishing today,
Yeah.
right? Where they put something out there that looks real, but it's not. And, a lot of people do fall for it. So it's one of the human errors that happens a lot still today.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of the dark side of personalization with email marketing, right? When you get so much into the email marketing mindset, it's like, I want to get people to click on things, but the inbox is also filled with these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And you gotta be careful about what you click on, but also what you send and whether you
Well,
seem like a threat or not.
100%, right? And, always click on the email address to see where that's coming from, to see if that's coming from the company that you think it is or not, right? And I would not open it if it's someone you don't know and it's in the title, it says payment due. Most likely that's a phishing attempt.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, next one. Your brand watch tool that you have, maybe a social listening tool, or maybe you have something even fancier like Blackbird AI. It flags a rumor about your company. turns out that it is coming from a competitor and maybe even a competitor's bot network.
Yeah. I mean, definitely think it's a threat if
Yeah.
it's coming from a competitor. Um, we look at what we call narratives, and it sits on top of social listening. So social listening companies are our partners,
Yeah.
but the narratives are what is impacting a lot of companies and executives today, where it can start with a single post and blow up. That could be started by a competitor, like you just said in this case, or by a cyber criminal or a nation state or a very unhappy customer, or you name it. So
Yeah.
it is definitely a threat, and those type of things can really impact a company in a significant way.
That is correct. So far you got 2 for 2. With this one,
Okay.
I have a bit of a follow-up question if you'll entertain me.
Sure.
What would be a version of this scenario that wouldn't be a threat and would be more of a trend? So when is using social listening tools to maybe start conversation and trends, even about other companies in your industry, innocent and okay?
Yeah. So there could be a positive narrative,
Mhm.
right? Say you come out with a new product, or the company just what's the right word that I can use? Just made a big investment to build a new
Uh-huh.
plant, right, and
Uh-huh.
create jobs. Positive narratives can come out of that, right? Where again, a single post could be like, wow, this is really exciting. This is a big opportunity for the city or the state that I live in, or it could be a job for me. And that turns into a very positive narrative that the company benefits from, right?
Yeah.
So that's an example where narratives could be positive or narratives could be harmful.
Yeah, I like that. All right, another one. A pop-up on a website app suggests a feature, maybe even an upsell feature, when you've been using that app for 3 days in a row. Is that a threat or a trend?
I mean, it's definitely a trend.
Correct.
It's a trend I don't necessarily like, but if it's done right and done well, I think it's okay.
Yeah. What would you say is done right? Like, what would make it be done right versus not?
I mean, if it's something that is very much attuned to my needs, or, it understands my intent, then without being creepy, I think could be very positive. Like, oh, I didn't know that was a new product that you offered or a new offering. I'm going to learn
Yeah.
more about it. Or, hey, there's an announcement that just came out. I want to learn more about that. Right. So I think if it's done right, just like all of marketing, if it's done right, it can be incredibly valuable. If it's done, and it can be done very wrong.
Yeah.
And I see examples of that all the time.
Perfect. Well, I think we got ourselves a good segue to actually get into the conversation. We will be back to some of these prompts in a bit, but the first round I think is over, and you got 3 for 3. So good job.
Alright. Yeah.
All
Thank you.
right. Well, I guess on the topic of marketing, being done right or wrong, right, and being able to be exploited, right, whether maliciously or without malicious intent, but still the consequences are the same. Let's talk about what a narrative attack even is, because that
Yep.
is a term I had not really encountered before, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have no idea what that means.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say, over the past year has become more and more understood.
Yeah.
If you see it in the news, there are narratives, thousands of times a day being picked up in the news or in social media. Some of them are positive, some of them come up quickly and go away quickly, but then others start with a single post and can blow up and target an executive or target a company. And I'll give you some examples of how that could be.
Yes, please.
So a narrative attack is a combination of lots of different conversations that are going on that are related,
Hmm.
right? The challenge with social listening, you look at all individual posts, you can't really understand trends and direction, and how harmful it could be, and how is it scaling, and who is it targeting. So what narrative intelligence is, gives you visibility into what the narratives are. And
Yeah.
those narratives are an attack where it's being used by, like I said, a cyber criminal or a nation state or an unhappy customer or a hyper agenda driven group that is unhappy with your organization, your
Mm-hmm.
policies, things that you've done, your executives, and things like that. And that attack can, again, be a single post turned into millions and millions of shares and posts. And all of a sudden, your stock price dives 25%, right?
Yeah.
Or the merger and acquisition that you were trying to put in place gets attacked and it may fall apart. Or the executive who gets a certain amount of compensation is being targeted because that company is, not doing the right thing by their
Uh-huh.
customers, right? There's so many examples of this, and I'll give you one around cybersecurity where there was a company that was breached, and it was just a single small organization, but it was a part of a much bigger.
Uh-huh.
And so the breach was announced, and then all of a sudden the narratives blew up. Hey, and it was a casino in Las Vegas. Um, then the narratives blew up. All the casinos in Las Vegas have been breached. Then it blew up. The parent company of that casino was breached, and the parent of that parent was breached, which was a massive, massive company. And this narratives just got worse and worse, and it started impacting everybody's stock price,
Mm-hmm.
valuation, the confidence of people going to those casinos because they were worried about, hey, is my information being stolen, or, am I at risk of something? So that narrative started out with a single breach, and it blew up very, very quickly, impacting the whole entire industry.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that happened with Silicon Valley Bank, right? It was a
Oh,
bank,
yeah.
that all of a sudden that was I've worked with for many, many years, and wonderful people. All of a sudden, word started to get out, confidence was lost, and within days, narratives blew up, and all of a sudden, it's a bank run, right? And it's not only impacting Silicon Valley Bank, it's impacting all banks, right? And what's
Yeah.
the next one to fall? So getting ahead of these narratives and seeing what is happening and who's behind it, the companies that we work with are trying to get proactive and saying, hey, here's something that is starting to have momentum. We need to address this publicly, or we need to take certain action to protect ourselves and our executives. And the more you're in the know of that, the more you can get ahead of it, reduce the risk, and potentially stop it from blowing up, and if you take the right steps. So
Yeah.
that's what Blackbird does. It works with national security organizations. It works with all the top global brands, a lot of the big banks, where we give them visibility into what are the top narratives that are targeting their organization, who's behind it, how is it spreading? Is it across networks? Is it bot driven? Is it cyber criminals? So if they have that data, then they're not guessing is what's happening. They know what's happening, and then they can make better strategic decisions. So that's what narrative attacks are. That's what narrative intelligence does to help protect against these companies. And if done
Hmm.
right, it could really significantly reduce the risk to a company.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And I feel like, well, where's the line though, right? Between what is a narrative attack versus something that is maybe more, legitimate, right? Or something that you might not want to stop, right? Because when you're dealing with public companies, for example, right, you could argue shareholders have a duty to know when something's gone wrong. You don't want companies to cover up wrongdoing or something that's happening. I could also see situations where people that are jumping on the trend feel like they're doing activism, right? They're like, we're revealing something bad that somebody is doing, we're combating an abuse of power. And I'm sure that's how some of these things snowball so much too. So where's the line between something you want to help people stop and corporations versus where it might be better if it's in the public eye?
So that's a great point, and I don't think there's a line. I
Mhm.
think if a company did something that they shouldn't have done, or something happened that no one expected, right? For people to speak up about it, I mean, I think that's wonderful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that could be your customers and saying, "Hey, I'm unhappy. This is not, what my expectations were," or, "Hey, a product defect comes out and it's," so that in that case, the company shows its true colors to say, okay, we did something
Uh-huh.
wrong. We need to go and tell what happened, and we need to own up to it, right?
Uh-huh.
Because more and more today, these companies can't hide from those type of things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, So if they're more proactive and they come out and say, look, this is what happened. And a lot of times something did happen, but then it's changed and made much worse. And if the company comes out and says, no, this is what's happening, here's the
Hmm.
story, here's how we're addressing it, and here's how we're trying to make our customers safe, then, that's a whole different way than trying to hide it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
why this works. We're not trying to say what's true or not. We're
Hmm.
saying here's the narrative, this is what's being said. You as a company need to stand up and do, what you feel is best, for your customers, for your company, for your employees, and that's what we give them the chance to do.
Yeah, it feels like the underlying philosophy of a solution like Blackbird is just visibility all around, right? Because one of the good things about the internet is that people might get more visibility into what a company might be doing, right? Whether it be good or bad. And here, what you're giving is for the companies to also have visibility into what people are saying about them, whether it is valid or not. But having visibility kind of all around seems to be the benefit at the core of it.
It is, but I think the thing that we see a lot of, which is really unfortunate, is when something happens, a crisis
Hmm.
happens, there are organizations outside the US, there are nation states
Hmm.
outside the US
Oh, yeah.
that will take that information and try to turn it into something so much more, right? And that's where misinformation, disinformation comes into play, where it's believable to a point, but then it gets, morphed and the perception becomes very different. And it's the conversation changes because these nation states are getting involved and trying to do harm to the US, to our
Yeah.
companies, to our healthcare organization, to our infrastructure, right?
Hmm.
So that's where, it's not just, you know, things just popping up. They are being influenced wherever they can by the people who and nation states who do not like us to try to do harm. And that's what we see over and
Oh, yeah.
over and over again.
I mean, the amount of evidence that's come out about multiple elections at this point, right? Starting from 2016. I am original Ukrainian, so I have a lot of feelings about the Russian hacking groups and all of the things that go on there. They like to go after Ukrainian infrastructure. There's constant electricity cutouts and things like that as well. So, yeah, and narratives and smearing campaigns. Yeah, very, very familiar,
Yeah, and it's
unfortunately.
they are very good at these misinformation, disinformation campaigns that impact funding, that impact public perception, and that's the really difficult and challenging things here
Oh,
because
yeah.
they can do whatever they want. They are well funded. They are using technology and AI to do this.
Yeah.
So that's why organizations, national security organizations, and global 2000 global companies need to also embrace this technology to fight back against it, to fight fire with fire, like
Yeah,
has
yeah,
been
exactly. Because if they have it, right, like how else are you going to combat it?
exactly.
I'm very curious. I don't know if you have an answer to this from the things that you have seen. How much are these kinds of scenarios, right, where something gets blown out of proportion or distorted? How much is it contributed to by just the state actors versus maybe private parties, right? Even potentially within the US that might be innocent, just not realize what they're doing and they're just contributing to it because they saw something, got shocked, or maybe some that do know what they're doing and it serves their private interest, right? Like there's a lot of rumors all around alleging that, this influencer, that influencer, or this TV show or this host, right, just was promoting a rumor that was generated by somebody else, maybe with bad interests from a foreign party, but they were doing it because it got them clicks. Like, how much do you see that balance and the contribution of these kind of private parties?
It's a great question, and it's the answer is it's all the above, and
Hmm.
it varies by narrative,
Yeah.
right? Like I'll give you an example of one analysis we did and a blog post we published. It was all around Taylor Swift, and the narratives that blew up around her with Travis Kelsey, with the Chiefs, with the Super Bowl, with all the things that she's involved in, and I'll just say this: my kids and I'm very much a big fan of hers, and I
Yeah.
give her a lot of credit.
Yeah.
You would not believe the organizations and the individuals and nation states would get in conversations around that just to disrupt things, just to change perception on things. And that's why our CEO, he was then brought on, multiple television stations during prime time to describe what was happening. And we actually showed our platform to say, here are the narratives, here's who's behind it, and here are how they're connected. And we visually showed that on TV because people wanted to know. And it varies. So Taylor Swift is one example where narratives are blowing up all the time, right? And we shared, here are the top narratives, and here's who's behind it, and kind of educated people on, like, hey, this is what's happening in the background, and you should know, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're being influenced by lots of different groups, individuals, and try to really understand really what's going on. And that's one reason I don't, mean to plug this in any way, but we came out with this product called Compass.
Mm-hmm.
It's free. You can go to our website. It's free, where you can put in any URL and it will tell you, hey, this looks like to be true, or this looks like to, be fabricated.
That's
And
interesting.
it's based off of reliable sources from thousands of sources, where it's our AI tool goes out and looks at the URL and gives you context around what's happening. So I'll give you an example. There was an image of the Eiffel Tower on fire spreading across social media, and it was shared over 1 million times. People believed it, like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, this is really
Yeah.
happening. And it's completely fabricated, right? Completely not real. So, you put the URL in the Compass, and it tells you this is based off of all these reliable sources. This is not happening, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of challenges people have today is they can't go to the news today and understand, hey, they don't have context around, hey, is this really happening or not? And
Yeah.
I think that is why the World Economic Forum, for the second year in a row, called misinformation, disinformation the number one global risk, right?
It's
For
a
the
bad one.
second year in a row. And then if you look at the second, third, fourth, and fifth risk, they're all influenced by narrative attacks, right? So that's why Blackbird's on this big, big mission to try to have an impact. And, we've fortunately been having customers say, one very big customer in national security said, hey, we felt hopeless about this situation until we started to work with you. So we started to understand what was truly happening out there, so we could respond to it in a way we were confident in doing.
I love that. That's great.
That
My
was
next
amazing. We
Yeah.
were in a room when they said it, and we're working really hard to try to have that impact. And when a customer says that to you, it, like, you get goosebumps, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's the kind of feedback you wanna frame, right, and look at it when you start your day's work.
And that to us was like, okay, all this hard work, sweat, tears, hours we're putting into this is having an impact.
That's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. That's great. My next question, I don't know if you'll find this annoying or not, so if you do, just tell me and we can cut this part out and pretend I never asked it.
Okay.
Um, what is your take on the whole TikTok controversy, right? Because there's all of these arguments back and forth on, like, is the China using this to, influence conversations, right? Is it actually an example of nefarious foreign agents, right, trying to influence conversations? I have a bunch of my own theories, especially about Russian influences on that too. But also, I hear so many counterexamples of, like, no, this is just where conversation's going, and maybe the government just doesn't like it, but this is innocent. Let people do what they're doing,
Yeah.
right? So, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I speak to social media as a whole. I don't
Yeah.
speak to specific
Hmm.
platforms, but there are areas where, there are definitely things happening and influence happening, and,
Yeah.
that is disappointing, right? And
Yeah.
there are a lot of, like, social media companies that have fired the people who are there to protect it, right?
Yep. A lot of them.
Security people and, things like that. And, so across social media, that is definitely happening. There's a lot of good happening still. But there is definitely influence. There is definitely things happening that people's perception are being, impacted. And that's an important thing to address, right?
Yeah.
And that's something, as we move forward into the future, how do we protect our kids more? How do we protect the elderly more from these type of things. And to me, there's a lot of other things going on out in the world that are targeting those folks. So it's not just social media, but it's something that we need to address at a worldwide level. That is hard to do with all that's going on in the world today.
It's hard to do, but you are right that it's not just TikTok. The next thing that I wanted to ask you about was basically I'm curious, kind of taking this back to marketing, right? Because I feel like the whole conceit behind the game that I'm doing with you as well is I do have this belief that a lot of marketers, in thinking only about, the benefit for their marketing program and thinking about the benefit to the metrics that they're responsible for, right? Like, we're trying to get traffic, we're trying to get pipeline, we're trying to do attribution, we're trying to report on this, we want to understand who's going on our site, everything else that they're doing. Sometimes the tools that I see people getting really, really into, it's so obvious to me that they're like massive vectors for cyber attacks, right? And threats. And I feel like if you're talking even wider, right, about narrative threats and just conversations, I have a feeling that a lot of marketers, because they're not aware of this, might be kind of feeding into things, right? And might be accidentally promoting things that they don't want to be promoting, right? And especially these kind of playing into the hand of, certain parties that they're not even aware are influencing these trends that they're trying to keep up with just because they're trying to seem like their brand is in touch with culture, right? Like reposting maybe a Taylor Swift rumor or whatever it might be. Do you have any kind of maybe mini primer that you could give to our listeners on the things that they should be aware of, that they can pay attention to, so they're not essentially taken for fools as they're
Yeah.
trying to lead marketing programs?
Yeah. I mean, I can totally understand, because the bad actors, the bad influencers, the nation states, as we'll call them, are getting very smart, right? And with
Mm-hmm.
AI, they've gotten more technically adept to sound human, act human. Their language skills and grammar have improved, where before you would be able to spot things pretty
Oh, yeah.
easily, right? But now it's very, very difficult. Like, deep fake videos is a great example, where it looks like the person, it sounds like the person, they're asking you to do something, but it's not them at all, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the technology and the skills of the bad actors have gotten so good, it's making it hard for everybody to understand what's real and what's not. So
Ah,
from that perspective, that's getting harder. And for everybody, whether it's cybersecurity people who are in the know, or executives, but from a marketing perspective, it's really important. I would say, you have to be very careful today about the marketing programs and campaigns you put in place, the the things you share, the things that you publish. You really have to have a keen eye as to what it is you're saying, and if you do say it, what the impact it could be on your audience, because if it's something that goes against a large part of your audience, then it could have a massive impact, right? I mean, everybody goes back to and talks about Bud Light, right? And the marketing program that was run there, and the creative agency that came up with the idea. And it was a, tiny kind of thought to do, but they felt it was important to do. But when that was published, for good or for bad or whatever, a large part of their customer base did not react well to it, right? And had a massive impact on the company's valuation, its stock, and its market share. And it continues to have that problem, right? So I guess in this world, especially with all that's going on in the world today, marketers have to be very careful. They have to be very thoughtful. I would say, be very, with respect to their customers, with respect to their brand, their company, cautious about what they want to do, and test it, and not just put it out there for everybody to see, so that they can get feedback early, maybe adjust it. And then that way, if they put something out there, it's been, pretty much vetted. That to me is what's important today. You can't just do something today and, without thinking about it, the ramifications could kill your company. And that's why I would say to marketers, just be careful, try to follow the company culture, the guidelines, and try to be true to what you believe is the right thing to do. And that's not always easy, especially in today's world. Whether it's something you're producing yourself or something you're sharing or something you're promoting. That's the hard thing that's going on in the world today.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess kind of building on that, what are the kinds of proactive actions that, the customers of Blackbird take, right? And that might be useful for our listeners to understand as well. Once they do see that there might be a narrative attack, right? Once they do see that there might be a trend that is a conversation is happening that might be hurting their share price, right? Or some merger announcement that they've had. What are the kinds of things that a marketing department can do when they see that happening?
Yeah. And that's, the good thing that I see, a good trend that's happening is we work with comms people, CMOs and marketing teams, cybersecurity teams, risk teams. Um, and what's happening is they are coming together, what we call a fusion center, where they are speaking on a regular basis because they realize something like this could impact the entire company and impact everything that they do, right? It's not siloed anymore. It has to be spoken about across the company because it could impact the executives, the board, the brand, the entire company. So we see these groups coming together and talking many times for the first time because they realize they all play a role. And that's why we're being pulled in to be able to give visibility into these narratives and all the things that's going on behind it. So these different organizations now know what's happening and that they can now take action against it, right? And this is where they may want to make a public statement about, hey, this is going on. This is what we're hearing, but this is truly the story that we want to share with you. And that could reduce the risk. They may decide to stay silent, but take action to ensure they're protecting the company in some way, shape, or form. Say if somebody has a narrative out there that's blowing up that there is going to be an attack on an executive, that's a very bad thing. But if there's an understanding that that's going on, the company can take the right steps to protect that executive to make sure something physically doesn't happen to them. Right? There's examples of where there are hyper agenda driven threat actors or influencers who are trying to cancel a brand, right? For whatever reason. And that's where getting the knowledge ahead of time that this is happening, the marketing people can work with the comms people to have a better response to protect their customers, to protect their brand, to protect their company. So it's about getting ahead of it and responding to it with a counter narrative in many cases, which tells their story, right? And if they do it right, if they do it well, it could significantly reduce the impact to the company. And so those are just some things that they can do. But knowing that this capability is out there, it really helps them from protecting them against harm. But they can also use it, like I said earlier, about narratives that are positive. Like if they see a positive narrative happening around a marketing campaign or a new product launch, they can capitalize on that and learn from that, maybe understand who their super fan groups are, and take further action to, enhance those discussions, those experiences to have an even more positive impact on the brand. So that's where narratives can be both positive and negative, and marketing teams who understand those actions and those flows of narratives can really take advantage of it to help the company.
I think that is such useful advice, honestly. Like that was a great set of tips, genuinely. Thank you for that.
You bet.
Okay, well, let's do another set of threat or trend questions. All right, here's the first one. This is about certain social listening trends. Let's say your brand monitor tool that you have is pulling comments from a members only LinkedIn group without asking the admins for permission.
I mean, I think that's a risk.
Uh-huh.
Um, like you got to do it the right way. Um, in my view, right?
Uh-huh.
Especially in today with CCPA and GDPR and
Oh yeah.
privacy and things like that. Like, do it the right way. And you can learn a lot by doing it the right way. And, to me, that you got to be able to sleep comfortably at night, that, that's how you feel you should handle the business, that your team should handle the business, that won't potentially come back and haunt you and impact the company in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So would you say we're leaning more towards threat or trend? You said it was a risk.
Um, I mean, it could be a trend that's happening, right?
Mhm.
But I think it is a threat to the company if it blows up.
Yeah, let's say it's a trend question mark,
Yeah.
right? Or with an asterisk. All right, I'll give you that point.
Okay.
Next one is, where is it? Yeah. So there's a lot of intent data tools that I'm seeing, especially in B2B marketing. They seem like candy to a lot of marketing leaders these days. So here's a scenario related to that. You're told by one of these tools that a Fortune 500 CFO was searching on your site, but then you contact them and find out that they have never actually visited.
Yeah. I think that is unfortunately a trend that happens, um, because none of these tools are perfect, right? But what I would say is understanding intent is really powerful. Marketing for too long, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, mass marketing and things like that. If it's not customized to the need of the individual, it's not going to be relevant to them, and it's going to be annoying to them, and they're not going to be happy about it. And they may not be happy about your brand or ever want to work with you again, right? If it's not relevant to them. But if you understand intent and you deliver the right message at the right time, that's really valuable to the person, that helps them do their job, in my view, that's the best of marketing, right? And do it in a way that's professional, do it in a way that's helpful, and just say, look, instead of, I'll give you an example with us. Hey, one example would be, hey, we'd like to sell you narrative intelligence, right? Which we would never do.
Yeah.
Or the other example would be, hey, we help a lot of global organizations understand narratives around M&A activities so that they can ensure all parties are, in a good position to understand the benefits and understand what the concerns are. So that way you're going to have a more successful opportunity to close this M&A activity. And when someone reads that and they say, I'm in M&A and I'm worried about something happening, and you send me that message, wow, if you could really help me, that, might make me the hero of my department, my company, and we close this big deal, and, it becomes successful for all parties, right? So the more relevant you can be, I think the customer will appreciate it. The more value you give them, the customer will appreciate it. I tell my team every time we do outreach, it needs to be personalized, but you have to give the prospect or the customer something of value. You can't ask, I want to have a meeting. I want to have a meeting. I get that 100 times a day on LinkedIn and emails. Hey, did you read my last email? That's the worst marketing possible. But it's like, hey, here is a Forrester report on threat intelligence that talks about XYZ narrative attacks, and Blackbird is featured as the leader in this space because we help protect against, executive targeting. That customer is going to appreciate that because that's something of value to them. So I think marketing can really be done wrong, and I see it every day. And if it's truly customized based off of my intent, I think it's really, really valuable.
I originally had that one marked as a threat, but you convinced me, so I will still give you that point.
Yeah.
We can call this a trend. Because
Yeah, I mean, it's, intent is wonderful if done correctly, done right. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen where a customer comes in and go, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I've been searching for weeks. You've given me exactly what I look for. And they become a customer and they are super happy, right? And we help them do their job better.
Yeah, it can be done right, it can be done wrong. Yeah,
Yep.
I agree. It is so dependent. Well, since my camera is back, I think we can jump into the last
Nice to
segment of
see
our
you again.
conversation. Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Um, Well, I wanted to talk a bit about just your approach to marketing, right? Because I think we've talked a lot about how interesting what Blackbird does actually is and the implications of it for marketing leaders. And I know that CMOs are one of the ICPs. But now I'd like to talk more about how you're approaching marketing Blackbird, right? Because it is a startup, it is a more unique offering, right? It's something that a lot of companies and stakeholders are not educated about either. So, how have you gone about it? Let's start with the more general question.
Great question. My last company was called Human Security, and when I left, we had 50 some people on my team, and we had built the company up, and Goldman Sachs had got involved in a lot of mergers and acquisitions. It was a lot of fun. It was a great ride. But I'm like, hey, I want to go back and start early again. And when I joined Blackbird, I was really the first marketing person that they had ever hired. So it was just me, myself, and I.
That's very
Uh,
early.
It's very early, a team of like 40 some people, and they're amazing, great people. But they, built up the technology, but it was time for them to go educate the world on what this is. And that's why I was brought in by some of the investors. Um, I go in with my playbook. I assess all the things that are going on, what's good, what's bad, and try to build a plan saying, okay, within 30 days, here's my view of what we should focus on for the next 6 to 12 months to get ourselves in a position to, start building an engine to tell the world who we are and what we do and why we're unique. I was able to have two hires. I brought in a content creator, former news reporter, really great background, and he helps write a ton of amazing content pulled from other parts of the company, our threat intel team, our engineering team, our AI team. So content is critical, right? You don't want to build a demand gen engine without content. So you build the content first. And then I hired an amazing demand generation person. She's amazing. And again, two senior people, and we have to do the basics, but we also have to do the really important things as well. But it was important to get that established first, right? So the content enabled us to get ourselves in front of the media, in front of the analyst, in front of customers and prospects and partners. And when our ABM demand gen kicked in, we were able to go and leverage that content in a way that helped us stand out and educate the world on what we do. And then I brought in, I'll share with you, the company's called Punch Team. I've used them in the past. They help us build our website, our brand design, our look and feel, and they did a great job for us. If you look at our site, every image is AI generated. Where Blackbird is the name of the company. So Blackbird is heavily featured in everything we do. And when people walk by a booth or people see our website or see our campaigns, they go, whoa, what is this? And that's important because there's over 5,000 cybersecurity companies out there. Everybody looks alike. Everybody says the same thing. Everybody says AI. You have to stand out. You have to stand out with important content that people find value in it. And if you push it out and educate them, they appreciate it. And then they're going to come to you when they're ready and say, okay, let's talk. Right. And that's been done here, leveraging my playbook in a way that I'm super proud of. The amount of inbounds we get because of how big this problem has gotten has been incredible. We have a small budget, but we use it wisely. We test things. We're, constantly having our CEO out there speaking at important events. So it's looking at the entire playbook of here's the 15 to 20 key things we need to do as we grow and mature to show the world, hey, we're the experts in this field. And if you have this problem, you should come and talk to us.
I love that. And I'll be honest, I've started over the course of this conversation just picturing you with your playbook in more and more comical, exaggerated ways in my head. So at this point, when you're saying that you had your playbook, I'm picturing you walking in with like this physically very large book, like they used to have in the Middle Ages, like one that's like this big, like pulling out the page,
There you go. Yeah. With all
penning it in with a
with all the
feather.
potions or all the whatever, yes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like that. It's, I'm going to publish a book about it someday with a lot of great stories and things like that. But
You should. That would be a good book. And you've already done the whole publishing thing,
I,
right? So now you can use
done
that.
one. I'm going to write a second as a follow-on to the first romance novel because it's halfway done. But a marketing book will be in the works too because there's so many great stories and great relationships, and I feel like marketing can have a significant impact on a company if it's done right, done with
Yeah.
passion, done the right way. And those are just some things I've learned along the way.
I feel like that is the theme of our conversation today, right? Marketing done right and how it can be done very right or very wrong, and talking about all of that. It seems like we've been talking about that in so many ways. I like that. I like it when a theme naturally comes together. So thank you for
You
that.
bet. You bet.
Um, One last question because I can't not ask it. You said earlier that part of your playbook is that you can't build a demand gen engine before you have content, and that you gotta work with content first. Could you go into why you believe that and why that is?
Yeah, I mean, so many people put, you know,
The size
this is
says a lot.
marketing done bad, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like a competitor will say, "Hey, we discovered this," and it's a press release, and they have a few facts and figures, and that's it, right? Or it's marketing-ish, especially in cybersecurity. You can't speak in marketing language. The cybersecurity people will crush you, right? You have to speak in their language, right? So, to me, you have to build that first in a way that's meaningful to your target audience for them to, one, be educated on what it is because it's a new category, right? They don't even know they need it yet. A year ago, now they know they need it. And then when they discover that Gartner's talking about you, that Forrester's talking about you, that Fortune is giving you awards, Fast Company, you're in the Wall Street Journal, you're at Bloomberg, you're, at Cynet, you're at RSA, you have a keynote with NATO at Black Hat, right? All these things you do to surround the customer and educate them, they're like, I have this problem. We have to address this. I've heard this company, Blackbird. I need to go talk to them, right? So the content has to be there first, has to be legitimate, has to go into a lot of specifics and details. We have to give a lot of data. We share a lot of imagery around here's what the threat actors look like. Here's what they did. Here's how many people were influenced by it. Here are the top 20 narratives that are targeting this organization. When you share at that level of detail versus a one pager that just says, hey, this happened, like a competitor might, very quickly you realize who's doing it right and who's not, right?
Yeah.
And is their product legit? Does it really truly work? And does it provide value?
Yeah, it's about building trust. As you were talking, I started thinking of a metaphor almost that like demand gen, it's like revving the engine of a car, like really hard and like really spinning the wheels and trying to get somewhere. But if you're stuck in mud and there's no paved road yet, you're not gonna get very far no matter how powerful that engine might be. You gotta
That's
pave
right.
the road first, and I feel like content and brand motions, that's what does it.
100%, 100%. So that was, my first hire, and we've created a tremendous amount of content. And I would tell you, leveraging AI has helped us, right? Like
Mhm.
from a blog perspective, um, we're leveraging AI to kind of give us a starting point on certain topics, and then we're adding all of our very specific content. So our teams can move really fast, right? And publish things of high value. And AI, I look at it as a good friend. Like it's helpful. I may not get along with it all the time. I may not agree with it all the time, but it's helpful and it's there for me to help me do my job better. And that's how we leverage it as a company to protect our customers, but also to create really valuable content.
Right, I like that. And I also like that you specified, right? We might not always get along with friends. I've had many a fight with a good friend before, right? It doesn't mean that you're always just in full agreement and fully in sync.
That's
That's
right.
great. I think this is a good point to end on. honestly, I think this was a great conversation and so much value for people. We will include links in the show notes to, Blackbird, to some of the content that it has, but also to your romance novel, because I think that is very important for the readers to have.
That's why, when I originally started to write this, I had no idea like we would ever have a conversation like this today, right? Where it would be included in a link to marketers. But that's just the fun part about it. That's
It
the thing that
is.
I would say is, look, as a marketer, you work really hard. You're under a lot of pressure to
Yeah.
create results, right? To help the company be successful. I always make sure you got to have fun along the way with your
Yeah.
team, but you also have to have fun outside, right? You gotta do fun, great things that, you look forward to, that you're passionate about. And that's, I think, really, really important to stay positive in a world today that's just a little bit crazy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it helps you, bring in some of that positive energy so that the stress at work doesn't get to you as much. And also sometimes it might just give you inspiration. Who knows, right? That's always so delightful when you do something completely random and then you come back to work and you're like, right, actually, I see how I could tie this in somehow.
So,
It's a great feeling. Well,
yeah,
thank you so much, Dan. I really enjoyed this chat.
my pleasure, Maria. It's great to spend time with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining Dan and I on this episode of the Marketing Speakeasy. Once again, this is a podcast where we try to get raw, where we try to, learn something about ourselves and marketing leaders. And I really do hope that you learned something today because Dan was an incredibly smart guest. I didn't really know much about narrative attacks before, even though I am a specialist in social listening and audience research, and this feels like the dark side of that in many ways. I feel like what Blackbird AI is doing is really interesting and not something that you could really do without machine learning technology. So I hope that you've liked it. There's some links in the description to follow Dan, to follow us, to follow the show, of course. And please let us know what you think. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can comment on the YouTube video. Just tell me if you liked it, right? We're here to make your life better. We're here to help you learn marketing. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
In the shadows, brilliance glows. Low lights, bright ideas flow. Marketing's minds unwind in the speakeasy's glow. Spilling secrets, spilling drinks. Legends meet where wisdom sinks. Vintage vibes with modern flair. Strategies beyond compare. Sipping wisdom, sharing tales. Marketing's past and future sales. Unfiltered conversations thrive in this speakeasy jive. Unlocking stories, secrets soar. Marketing insights to explore. A toast to past and future dreams in a lounge where brilliance beams.